Hey there, this is Red Falcon. This is the sixth match of the 2022 Summer Wargame Red Dragon Microdeck Tournament Series. And with me today is my co-host Trout. Today we have the baddies versus stepdads. And we have the baddies on Team Blue and the stepdads on Team Red. So Trout, any words on this map before we get into it?
I'm pretty excited for this one. Once again, it's a pretty quick match, meaning it's going to be a lot of fast stuff, fast attacks, and fast caps. I really like seeing blue four teams come out just because it's different.
Oh yeah. Our
uh,
server's been having a lot of Red 4 players, but it's nice to see some refreshing Blue 4 players come into the mix.
a quick look over the initial layout. We have some helicopters sitting on the ground to start, which is always means a bit of a slower start. As well as we have a couple helicopters, gunships double stacked over on uh, the stepdad side. So a little bit about it'll be interesting to see how that opens up and how that starts. With a fairly aggressive helicopter spread like that, looking that it's lined up against some Stormer H VMs, it's and a Cheetah PRTL actually. It'll be a pretty if those helicopters run into that anti-air, it's going to be very very painful
Oh yeah,
starting off with stepdads. So
oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
And the Stormer and the Cheetahs is just gonna be absolutely rough to deal with. And the 2A1 NLs are nothing to be messed with. And I thought I might have seen even a 2A4 hang out somewhere in here. So, but yeah, all right. So
if you're ready, I'm ready.
yeah, all right. All right. Starting in three, two, one, play. All right, and they're off.
Nice, quick deploy on the baddie side. They're all shooting down that highway. The, the interesting match to see, Highway to Seoul is kind of how do you say it? It's got a lot of potential for very quick movement, and often it gets bogged down in the side points. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes.
Yeah, the plateaus and the constant hedgerow versus the hedgerow combat makes things quite interesting. So we see over here that Autumn indicated that they're going to start off with two tornadoes off the bat. So I think Autumn is intending to kind of use these for like combat air patrol. Check to see if there's like any cheeky helicopter flanks or something. Because this is a big wide map. Absolutely is. This is the 2v2 Highway to Seoul is technically the same size as 3v3 size Highway to Seoul. And you can find all sorts of cheeky helicopter plays, as you would know, Trout.
Interesting to see. With the helicopter play, it was used to take foxtrot. So normally with helicopters, you'll push them forward, you'll take forward points. In this case, the helicopters
And
are being used for early
I
cap,
think I think the tornadoes
but
are from Autumn are going to hone in on something else's MiG 29 over here. And this is the East German one too. So if it gets down, that's half that card going away. Yep.
and here's the other one.
But the MiG 29 has these two planes which are next to each other. If they can splash them, they're both downed. They are both
Ooh, that's
downed.
very, very expensive.
Is else coming in with another one? This looks like the
That's
Polish
intriguing.
one. And wow, solid play from else there.
That was a very, very expensive exchange for both sides.
Oh yeah, I think I definitely think that Autumn took the brunt of paying that trade though. Flying their ASF that close allowed them to be killed twice for one.
Right. I will say very interesting tactically here. So the helicopters usually give you the chance to move troops forward.
Hmm.
In this case, they dropped the troops forward and they pulled back, but they don't have reinforcement in place yet. And I don't think these assets on Gulf are going to stand up to what's coming in to fight them.
Nope. And that salamander really tried to deal with that cheetah. And put some rockets into it, but just wasn't enough until it got by the time it got downed. Cheetah is just doing like a solid job here, and the bubbles letting these things do
Oh,
their thing.
we'll see if this bomber gets its bombing run off. could be a nasty strike if it lands.
Ooh, that looks like a napalm strike. Hitting the intersection here. Oh, and it took out the anti-air. That cheetah is out.
Oh, and if these Mi-24Ds can get in and actually engage, they will be able to wipe that whole little armor column out.
And I think it was actually a smart play by Gray Soviet to pull the helicopters back initially, um, and wait for that airstrike to come in. Because now it looks like Bubbles on a defensive, kind of following back here. For good reason. Those Mi-24Ds will deal some solid damage to these tanks.
Absolutely.
Cerny Alice is kind of coming in to do a seed sweep, not finding anything. Um, yeah, and so we see also Autumn is starting to pull in their tanks. Um, with a Challenger 1 Mark III, I believe that makes Autumn a armored player? Absolutely. Yep. So then that makes Bubble here a mechanized one.
The thing I'm a little bit concerned about on the Foxtrot side is they've very much dedicated themselves to holding Foxtrot, but that doesn't take Delta and Echo. And so Grey Soviet's assets there are good defensive, but it won't win the match. Um,
Absolutely. Um, Holding this plateau is nice, but it should not be your starting option. It should be your fallback option. Yeah, you have to contest the spaces, and it looks like Autumn is just kind of probing around and finding that there really isn't anything in Echo or Delta to really spar with them.
Looking at the mix of troops as well, Grey Soviet is essentially fighting on the ground by themselves. So there aren't actually any assets from Alice really on the ground anywhere.
Yeah, I think somebody else has
Uh,
gone airborne for this match. Um, uh, Sereni Alice is usually better known as an airborne player, for better or worse. But when it comes to the ground game, usually Sereni Alice will take to the air anyways. Um, this match did have some issues with a little bit of scheduling, so it came down to a 2v2, and this was who was available. Um, Map was ruled accordingly for it and all, but nonetheless, the 2v2 is, everyone had a chance to build their deck for a 2v2, and this is what they decided to rule.
all right, looking at it and kind of looking at what's being pulled and how it's being deployed, the Stepdads are going to have a very hard time taking momentum at this point, simply because of the assets they have. They just don't have heavy enough assets to really counter those tanks and then be able to invest troops forward to take the ground. Uh, so without something more substantial than what Grey Soviet has, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to take any ground here.
So Autumn's coming in with the tanks. Looks like some cheap Chieftain Mark IIs. Nothing too fancy. Um, Take a look at this tank real quick. Yeah, it's just a cheap 35 pointer. Terrible speed. Basic gun for 45 points. But it is enough to deal with Grey Soviet. Chieftains are advancing while the challengers are kind of just moving up behind them to support them.
Well, the Stormers are a little bit far back to effectively counter those air attacks.
Hmm.
But saying it's cheap tanks, it's not the end of the world.
And those here tanks have to absorb the missiles instead of the challengers. I think Alm's perfectly fine with that. Um, it's got enough armor to either absorb a hit or cheap enough that you can withstand losing it. You know. Um, let's see. We got somebody else over here with a thermal barrack bomber going straight for the attack marker next to Gulf. Believe that they know that there's a recon up there, and it's gonna be right on point. It's
Oh,
gonna be absolutely on point. All the Caesar are probably dead. What? They got out just in the nick
They
of time?
knocked out just in time.
Yep. Wow. Okay. Lucky Huserman. But those Grenadiers aren't going to have the same look, I don't think.
No, definitely going in against two tanks and a little bit of a LCR-40. They'll just get cut to pieces.
Yeah. So we got Bubba Bath as Block 15 or F-16A over here doing some combat air patrol. Pretty looking airspace is looking pretty quiet right now. I'm assuming that the air altercations that both teams exchanged early off meant that there's a lot more limited assets for air to air, but maybe I'm speaking too soon. Somebody else is coming out here with the Seed, the Su-25K, and two MiG-29s, but evacuating all of his birds at this particular moment. Che-
It'll be interesting to see how this goes
and the
because,
Cheetahs had their guns off as well, but I thought it was interesting that somebody else evac his seaplane before having a chance to figure out what the anti-air might have been keeping the radars off or not, and they paid for it.
yeah, nice shoot down on this SU-25K, I believe. Came in and the radars came on the Cheetah and just cut it out of the sky.
Absolutely.
Nice solid play.
Well, it looks like the radars were back online, and somebody else got a little bit of payback on one of them, one of those anti-airs over there. And the Stoot Trooping were taken up by the bomber. A little bit of expensive, you know, to be dropping bombs, but and risking a plane, but got back without taking a shred of anti-air. So at this point, I think somebody else is aware that there's some radar play at work here, radar deception tactics going on by the enemy, by stepdads particularly. Um, so Grey Soviet's T-62M is engaging these tanks and not having a good day. One one of the T-62Ms is even moving to advance to engage one of these Leopard for Scottings, the recon tank. But the moment it fires gives away its position, and the 2A1NLs come in to clean it up. The MLU is coming in to absolutely bully that 25K for coming into the airspace.
It'll be a very nice exchange. We'll see how this ends. With only a Strela over the Stepdad's airspace, it's not the strongest out here then. That being said, those MiG-29s do fairly well.
Indeed. And that's the point. It looks like Autumn has absolutely captured Delta and Echo by themselves, and Grey Soviet is forced to defend on the plateau. Which, at this point, I think Autumn's perfectly fine with just sitting on Echo and Delta and waiting for somebody else and Grey Soviet to come over the plateau. Because looks like Stepdads has the bleed on sorry, looks like the baddies have the bleed on Stepdads.
Yeah, very much the position you want to be in. You know, you've got the defense set up. You've got good layers of, tanks and infantry and recon. And at this point, you sit back and you say, well, what can you throw at me to get me off here? And if they can't throw you off, that's a game. So,
Yeah,
really nice positioning early in the match.
it's kind of like the sumo wrestler sitting on a regular fight, like a boxing fighter. If you can't
Pretty much, yeah.
if you can't get me off, that's the game.
Nice work with thermobaric bombers, definitely. They oof, definitely caused quite a bit of pain to the infantry trying to move forward.
Interesting choice. Sony Alice's Salamandra has its rocket pods off.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm very curious about that.
Same.
I wonder, they only have one fob, so I'm wondering if it's a tactic to maintain supplies. I really don't know.
I think so. That would make sense. But looks like Gray Soviet's just helping himself.
I will point out a nice layer defense over on the far left-hand pass. So Bubble Bathis and Autumn have put just a bit of recon out there. They've got eyes all the way along the area around the mountain. Not a huge investment of points, but just enough to make sure nothing's coming through there.
So it looks like Sony Alice was indicating he was going to bomb a certain position, believing there might have been a command there, but um, whatever he thought was there wasn't. Maybe the anti-air moved. And it looks like Autumn is moving their anti-air after firing it. Or maybe not. Maybe just a little bit.
Managed to see that MiG-29 12A. Losing one of those at this point in the match would be very, very painful.
And this M4P, the seed plane is down by the MLU and by the F-16s, basically.
I have to say these ASFs, the Strelas just do not have the reach out and touch, and they cannot counter them on the ground.
Yep. Those Strelotams are good against planes, or sorry, good against aircraft, helicopters, but have a limited range against planes. Um, and looks like Gray Soviet's trying to push his tanks over the plateau to no success.
Mm.
The Chieftains and the Challengers absolutely ate him up the moment he stepped over that plateau. I don't see Gray Soviet being able to push over that plateau for the remainder of the match. And that could be rough.
I'm just looking at what's coming in for reinforcements. Just more transports, supply, infantry. So at this point, I'm thinking that
And
the baddies are just
bubble
bringing troops to reinforce the position.
and the baddies are just bullying. The Gray Soviet brought out a Strelatinum and it got sniped out by a plane. If that ain't bullying, I don't know what is. This looks like Bubble was trying to counter some of the planes, the MiG-29s that came out, but didn't really have to and just kind of fell back and went back to the airspace, went back to the airbase.
One thing I'll mention, I think that Bolbath is bringing troops in for Gulf. The pathing on this map particularly is quite difficult, and a lot of the troops end up driving a very long and contorted path all the way across the map to get to position. Like a lot of war game maps, unfortunately, some of them have very bad pathfinding. Yeah, you can see the infantry coming up for Gulf right now. It's just moving into Delta, and that'll be the reinforcements to really stabilize that fight. I'm kind of waiting for a desperation attack. That'll be really the turning point, is at the point where the Septats have to commit. If they commit and they overcommit, it'll allow for a counterattack. They'll pretty much win the game very quickly. That plus 2 point lead isn't huge, but it's enough that it's definitely forcing them to engage in not very favorable terms. They've just pushed some T-72s forward near Echo, and they are getting cut to pieces by the Chieftains.
Those warriors were really resilient. With 6 frontal armor, they absorb those bombs pretty well.
Oh yeah, that's not bad at all, actually.
And the leopards are making it all the way too. Looks like once they stayed outside the blast radius and didn't get stuck inside the napalm, they kind of get away scot-free.
All right, GDEP PRTL is just trying to get in to take out the Mi-24Ds. Once it can engage, it will shoot those helicopters into the air extremely quickly. And they are double stacked. I think with the gun, it won't affect them as much.
For sure.
Yeah, and they've successfully killed it.
We got another napalm strike coming in. And looks like the napalm strike just went around all the units that were over here. Although Snow Trooper and I starting to kind of move into the napalm. Just a little microwing oversight there. It happens to the best of us.
Happens to me all the time,
Oh yeah.
and I am not the best. A bit of infantry moving up unsupported, just in Gulf here. So Suit Trooping moving forward to fight the Mole Schulzen, but they don't really have smoke, they don't really have artillery, they don't really have a tank behind them or
Serenialis
anything.
is plane managed to
Oh,
get away and took out a plane with it, but then the Stormer HVM took it out.
and having watched the air losses, at this point, the Serenos can't afford to lose any planes really.
Oh, and there it
Uh,
goes. The F-15 bomber got the command unit in Gulf, giving the baddies a +3 lead now, deepening the crisis.
ah, very nice. Oh, very nice thermobaric drop on Gulf. Knocked out 2 units of infantry and kind of just stunned a build-up over on the right-hand side of Gulf. That being said, I don't think either side really has units invested nicely to be able to really hit the Gulf at this point. We'll have to see what comes forward and what can really get in there to kind of finally capture that point.
Yeah. And Grey Soviet having to kind of span both sides of the ground war means he's gonna be running really thin on top of the plateau. At this point, it might almost be more of a question of when or if Autumn will climb on top of the plateau and just overrun everything at this point because the potential is viably there to do it.
Yeah, without decent reinforcements and with a dedicated air player with a two-player match like this, it will be very, very difficult for the Septads to effectively counter just this armor building in and setting up, and the very large amount of like Stormer HVMs kind of set up on Delta and Echo. I mean, it's kind of a safe spot.
Yeah,
It's just very risky to get in there with
and
anything.
the Stormer over here is just taking pot shots at the C2M that is not being. It, I don't think Grey Soviet's aware this is being fired on, but here it is, and looks like it's only taking 1 damage at a time from the Stormer, but you know, there it is. Something else is kind of starting to give a highlight to the Soviet here that the CCWM is being fired on. And Grey Soviet pulls up to the edge of the plateau and starts receiving all sorts of fire from the Challengers, Chieftains, and Stormers.
I'm kind of interested to see where this goes from here because I don't think either side has critical mass to really do a decisive move. Um, the big thing right now is just a +4 lead. Uh,
Yep.
that's got to be countered, and disorganized attack in the Gulf will really sort of cement the match as being finished. So we'll see if they can pull off something organized or disorganized, and what comes of that. A very dangerous map for the salamanders and the helicopters. Some fairly strong anti-helicopter assets, and as they try to move forward, they'll definitely be in range of just getting shot down very, very quickly.
Is is that a supply truck driving up the hotel? Chief, you see
I
that?
I do. I don't think it's a supply
I
truck.
think it's
I think it's a.
yeah, I think it's just a transport. Ah, and somebody else nabs it with the salamander.
I think what they were doing is they were just setting it up as transport to see where fire came back at it, and see what's up there and kind of what is the tactical depth of that line.
All right, so here you go, Trout. Here's a desperation attack.
Oh, and that is expensive. That is one of those MiG 29912As down. There's one left at this point. Hmm. Light skirmishing on Gulf. They managed to neutralize the command on Gulf, but they haven't really retaken it, and they've got a command incoming, so that'll help slow down the point lead, but it's still a +2 at that point, and so that's still 2 more points have to be taken, that's a very difficult push at this point.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit surprised. Fob-wise, there's still half a fob, so there's lots of supplies for those Mi-24Ds and those attack helicopters.
And it's interesting. I'm not seeing any fobs for the baddies.
They have no fobs,
No fob.
so they are relying on trucks and they're relying on resupply. Oh,
How is this bomb gonna do? Oh, well, that takes care of one squad of grenadiers.
oh, well, there we go. One plane shot down.
Oof.
Thermobaric bomber got away, but it's damaged, so it'll be a little bit before it's back on the map.
We got some LSTR being spotted out here, it looks like. Right, no,
Looks
they're
like we
getting off their
have
position, but
light density Charlie on Charlie of Bubble Bath. This has brought a couple tanks, some infantry forward, and is moving in to sort of try to invest Gulf with a few more troops. With the wide open areas, kind of through Gulf, getting those leopards back in the bushes so that if something's spotted, they can kind of pop out, provide a bit of fire support is not a bad position for them. Interestingly enough, this is a match with 0 artillery. There's no mortars, there's no guns, there's literally nothing, no rockets, no support assets in terms of ranged artillery at all.
and looks like we see Bubble committing to an assault into Gulf.
With infantry still in the transports, that could be a little bit expensive if they get hit. We'll kind of see what happens. Oh, there we go.
There goes a cheetah.
So very expensive. Some grenadiers moving forward in transports, and they just got cut up by some LSTR 40s.
LCR 40s are getting cut up by the tanks firing on them.
Not a terrible trade, but definitely a little bit expensive. Pivot attack over on Echo. So there's an MI-35, there's an infantry to push forward into Echo.
And this is pretty much like a textbook sort of open field infantry advancing push. Let the enemy just absolutely expose themselves by firing, and the supporting tanks advancing will open fire on the forces that are trying to conceal themselves.
And there's a lot of firepower with all those tanks there. Anything that pops out will get hit and die very quickly.
And that's exactly what just happened to those ball shoots.
So there's attempted assault on Echo. The helicopter assets survived, but the infantry assets died
And
out,
that,
so
oh,
there's no sustained impact.
some M24D is coming over here to help punish those tanks a little bit. So, Bubble over here flying the F-16 on these helicopters, just kind of strafe them, I guess.
Yeah, definitely trying to hold the helicopters back using the Cheetah and the F-16, but it's not quite enough. Well, working.
Eh,
I will say there's quite a bit of helicopter assets that are back over hotel, but for the stepdads at this point, there's enough anti-air still standing, and there's enough air assets still standing on the baddie side that it's nigh to impossible for them really to push back, and we take the 3 points necessary to actually win this match.
absolutely.
Um, I have to say, throughout, very nice use of thermobaric bombers. They've definitely taken a toll on units and wiped out a lot of advancing infantry, and they definitely slowed down the match and held it on Gulf for a very long time.
LCR are trying their damnedest to protect the command, but they gave everything.
A lot of tanks.
And yeah, it just looks like there's going to be a major altercation over by Echo Delta Foxtrot. It's just going to be a staring contest at the plateau. Another side wanting to really advance over the other.
Yeah, and in this case, where Delta and Echo are, prime importance to holding the map, without being able to hold one of those 2 points and just keeping the fight over on Gulf, it's very, very difficult to push back and actually regain momentum.
Absolutely.
Especially with Sternialis, I think a lot of the heavy air assets have been shot down at this point, and you get a MiG-29 912A coming in to drop some bombs and doing a good job of it, but it's just not enough volume at this point to really keep the fight going. And there it goes. That last MiG-29 is shot down over Foxtrot. So no more thermobaric bombers.
Indeed. And with a +4 lead, looks like things are going to come to a close here.
We have 5 ticks, and the match will be done.
Sornialis looks like he's out of units, but the time's out. Or they know that it looks like they both surrendered actually. Just kind of admitting where they weren't gonna be able to do much more.
Tough match, really hard match for Grey Soviet. It's kind of a weird match you don't see where there's a lot of asymmetry between the forces, and one of the forces has the assets to hold the ground, the other does not, and because of that, the Grey Soviet had to play fairly conservatively at the beginning and didn't invest forward because they didn't have the assets to back it up really, and so it locked it down into a position where they had to fight the offensive, and very very hard position to fight from.
Oh, absolutely. Um, yeah, good. It was a good air fight to watch. Spurniel's definitely had his job in the air to him, but Autumn and Bubble just both agreed that they're basically going to run armored and mechanized, and they'll bring some planes to help counter the airspace in case there's some contests in the air, and that's exactly what they did. Um, while both of them pushed pressure on Grey Soviet on the ground, somebody else just didn't have enough assets on the ground or heliborne or airborne to really deal with the volume or efficiently spot them out and eliminate the tanks. Um, so it was just kind of this build up after build up, and it just tipped the scales for Autumn and Bubble. I think the biggest sin though was giving Echo and Delta earlier and never advancing off the plateau. That was maybe Grace Over's biggest mistake was not forcing them to be able to have to contest those regions because they basically just sent in some recon, realized there was nothing there, and just moved in and guarded the plateau from there.
Absolutely. Giving the opponents the chance to really set up a good defensive and just sit on the defensive meant it means they choose when to fight, they choose where to fight, and they choose where to put the assets, and you've got to attack against the points they hold, and that makes it a very very difficult fight.
Indeed. But no, it was an interesting match to watch. Um, and I'll be looking forward to reviewing the next one.
Absolutely.
All right. And with that, thank you for watching, everyone. We'll see you in the next video.